Arabian Peninsula. Simplified Arabia is a peninsula of Western Asia situated northeast of Africa on the Arabian Plate. From a geological perspective, it is considered a subcontinent of Asia. It is the largest peninsula in the world, at 3,237,500 square kilometers. The Arabian Peninsula consists of the countries Yemen, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, as well as parts of southern Iraq and Jordan. The peninsula formed as a result of the rifting of the Red Sea between 56 and 23 million years ago, and is bordered by the Red Sea to the west, the Persian Gulf to the northeast, the Levant to the north and the Indian Ocean to the southeast. The Arabian Peninsula plays a critical geopolitical role in the Middle East and Arab world due to its vast reserves of oil and natural gas. Before the modern era, it was divided into four distinct regions: Hejaz, Najd, Southern Arabia and Eastern Arabia. Hejaz and Najd make up most of modern-day Saudi Arabia. Southern Arabia consists of modern-day Yemen and some parts of Saudi Arabia and Oman. Eastern Arabia consists of the entire coastal strip of the Arab side of the Persian Gulf. Geography. The Arabian Peninsula is located in the continent of Asia and bounded by the Persian Gulf on the northeast, the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman on the east, the Arabian Sea on the southeast and south, the Gulf of Aden on the south, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait on the southwest, and the Red Sea, which is located on the southwest and west. The northern portion of the peninsula merges with the Syrian desert with no clear border line. Although the northern boundary of the Arabian Peninsula is generally considered to be the northern borders of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, the most prominent feature of the peninsula is desert. But in the southwest there are mountain ranges which receive greater rainfall than the rest of the Arabian Peninsula. Harat ash-Sham is a large volcanic field that extends from the northwestern Arabian Peninsula into Jordan and southern Syria. Political boundaries. The peninsula's constituent countries are Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates on the east, Oman on the southeast, Yemen on the south and Saudi Arabia at the center. The island nation of Bahrain lies off the east coast of the peninsula. 6 countries, including Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates and Oman, form the Gulf Cooperation Council. This is, however, a disputed term. Iranians assert that it is a historical and internationally recognized convention to name it the Persian Gulf, while Arab states, and most notably the 6 GCC member countries, have been claiming that the Gulf is Arabian since its shallow marine depths are a geological continuity of the Arabian Peninsula's eastern low-lying coasts, from Kuwait to the UAE's northern Emirates. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia covers the greater part of the peninsula. The majority of the population of the peninsula live in Saudi Arabia and in Yemen. The peninsula contains the world's largest reserves of oil. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are economically the wealthiest in the region. Qatar, a small peninsula in the Persian Gulf on the larger peninsula, is home of the Arabic-language television station Al Jazeera and its English-language subsidiary Al Jazeera English. Kuwait, on the border with Iraq, is an important country strategically, forming one of the main staging grounds for coalition forces mounting the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Population. Though historically lightly populated, political Arabia is noted for a high population growth rate, as the result of both very strong inflows of migrant labor as well as sustained high birth rates. The population tends to be relatively young and heavily skewed gender ratio dominated by males. In many states, the number of South Asians exceeds that of the local citizenry. The 4 smaller states having their entire coastlines on the Persian Gulf exhibit the world's most extreme population growth, roughly tripling every 20 years. In 2014, the estimated population of the Arabian Peninsula is 77,983,936. Genetics at the crossroads between Africa and Eurasia. Arabia is necessarily a melting pot, its peoples enriched by successive gene flow over the generations. Y chromosome listed here are the human Y chromosome DNA haplogroups in Arabia. Haplogroup J is the most abundant component in the Arabian Peninsula, embracing more than 50% of its Y chromosomes. Its two main subclades show opposite latitudinal gradients in the Middle East. J1M267 is more abundant in the southern areas, reaching a frequency around 73% in Yemen, whereas J2M172 is more common in the Levant. J accounts for the majority of in Saudi, Sudan, and a primary element in North Africa. Seems to be an exclusively Adnani marker. Landscape geologically, this region is perhaps more appropriately called the Arabian subcontinent because it lies on a tectonic plate of its own. The Arabian Plate, which has been moving incrementally away from the rest of Africa and north, toward Asia, into the Eurasian Plate. The rocks exposed vary systematically across Arabia, with the oldest rocks exposed in the Arabian-Nubian Shield near the Red Sea, overlain by earlier sediments that become younger towards the Persian Gulf. Perhaps the best preserved ophiolite on Earth, the Seamale ophiolite, lies exposed in the mountains of the UAE and northern Oman. The peninsula consists of a central plateau, the Nejd, with fertile valleys and pastures used for the grazing of sheep and other livestock, a range of deserts, the Nephud in the north, which is stony, the Rub al-Khali or Great Arabian Desert in the south with sand estimated to extend 600 feet below the surface, between them, the Dana, in Hejaz, ranges of mountains, paralleling the Red Sea coast on the west but also at the southeastern end of the peninsula. The mountains show a steady increase in altitude westward as they get nearer to Yemen, and the highest peaks and ranges are all located in Yemen. The highest, Jabal an-Nabi Shuayb in Yemen, is 3,666 meters high. Stretches of dry or marshy coastland with coral reefs on the Red Sea side. Oases and marshy coastland in eastern Arabia on the Persian Gulf side. Arabia has few lakes or permanent rivers. Most areas are drained by ephemeral watercourses called wadis, which are dry except during the rainy season. Plentiful ancient aquifers exist beneath much of the peninsula, however, and where this water surfaces, oases form and permit agriculture, especially palm trees, which allowed the peninsula to produce more dates than any other region in the world. In general, the climate is extremely hot and arid, although there are exceptions. Higher elevations are made temperate by their altitude, and the Arabian Sea coastline can receive surprisingly cool, humid breezes in summer due to cold upwelling offshore. The peninsula has no thick forests, although desert-adapted wildlife is present throughout the region. According to NASA's Gravity Recovery and Climate Experiment satellite data analyzed in a University of California, Irvine-led study published in Water Resources Research on 16 June 2015. The most overstressed aquifer system in the world is the Arabian Aquifer System, upon which more than 60 million people depend for water. 21 of the 37 largest aquifers have exceeded sustainability tipping points and are being depleted, and 13 of them are considered significantly distressed. A plateau more than 2,500 feet high extends across much of the Arabian Peninsula. The plateau slopes eastwards from the massive, rifted escarpment along the coast of the Red Sea, to the shallow waters of the Persian Gulf. The interior is characterized by cuestas and valleys, drained by a system of wadis. A crescent of sand and gravel deserts lies to the east. Land and sea. Most of the Arabian Peninsula is unsuited to agriculture, making irrigation and land reclamation projects essential. The narrow coastal plain and isolated oases, amounting to less than 1% of the land area, are used to cultivate grains, coffee and tropical fruits. goat, sheep, and camel husbandry is widespread elsewhere throughout the rest of the peninsula. Some areas have a summer, humid tropical monsoon climate, in particular the Dhofar and Al-Mahra areas of Oman and Yemen. These areas allow for large-scale coconut plantations. Much of Yemen has a tropical monsoon rain-influenced mountain climate. The plains usually have either a tropical or subtropical arid desert climate or arid steppe climate. The sea surrounding the Arabian Peninsula is generally tropical sea with a very rich tropical sea life and some of the world's largest, undestroyed and most pristine coral reefs. In addition, the organisms living in symbiosis with the Red Sea coral, the protozoa and zooxanthellae, have a unique hot weather adaptation to sudden rise in sea water temperature. Hence these coral reefs are not affected by coral bleaching caused by rise in temperature as elsewhere in the Indo-Pacific Coral Sea. The reefs are also unaffected by mass tourism and diving or other large-scale human interference. However, some reefs were destroyed in the Persian Gulf, mostly caused by phosphate water pollution and resultant increase in algae growth as well as oil pollution from ships and pipeline leakage. The fertile soils of Yemen have encouraged settlement of almost all of the land from sea level up to the mountains at 10,000 feet. In the higher reaches, elaborate terraces have been constructed to facilitate grain, fruit, coffee, ginger and cat cultivation. Arabian Peninsula is known for its rich oil, i.e., petroleum production due to its geographical location. Etymology. During the Hellenistic period, the area was known as Arabia or Aravia. The Romans named 3 regions with the prefix Arabia, encompassing a larger area than the current term, Arabian Peninsula, Arabia Petraea, for the area that is today southern modern Syria, Jordan, the Sinai Peninsula and northwestern Saudi Arabia. It was the only one that became a province, with Petra as its capital. Arabia Deserta signified the desert interior of the Arabian Peninsula. As a name for the region, it remained popular into the 19th and 20th centuries, and was used in Charles M. Doughty's Travels in Arabia Deserta. Arabia Felix was used by geographers to describe what is now Yemen, which enjoys more rainfall, is much greener than the rest of the peninsula and has long enjoyed much more productive fields. The Arab inhabitants used a north-south division of Arabia, al-Sham al-Yaman, or Arabia Deserta Arabia Felix. Arabia Felix had originally been used for the whole peninsula, and at other times only for the southern region. Because its use became limited to the south, the whole peninsula was simply called Arabia. Arabia Deserta was the entire desert region extending north from Arabia Felix to Palmyra and the Euphrates, including all the area between Pelusium on the Nile and Babylon. This area was also called Arabia and not sharply distinguished from the peninsula. The Arabs and the Ottoman Empire considered the west of the Arabian Peninsula region where the Arabs lived the land of the Arabs, Bilad al-Arab, and its major divisions were the Bilad al-Sham, Bilad al-Yaman, and Bilad al-Iraq and modern-day Kuwait. The Ottomans used the term Arabistan in a broad sense for the subcontinent itself, starting from Cilicia, where the Euphrates River makes its descent into Syria, through Palestine, and on through the remainder of the Sinai and Arabian Peninsulas. The provinces of Arabia were Al-Tih, the Sinai Peninsula, Hejaz, Asia, Yemen, Hadramaut, Mahra and Siluk, Oman, Hassa, Bahrain, Dana, Nufud, the Hamad, which included the deserts of Syria, Mesopotamia and Babylonia.